Elon Musk is no stranger to risk, but this might actually be the biggest risk in terms of risk and reward that Elon has ever bet on. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I want to talk today about Tesla, but I want to start with talking about SpaceX just a little bit. The Angry Astronaut has done a couple of really good videos on this, so I'll let you go to him for more in-depth detail about this. But it's become quite clear that Elon Musk is betting the farm for SpaceX on the new Starship. He's basically saying Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, Crew Dragon, all of that stuff is wonderful, and look at the cadence. I mean, it's just incredible. They're just producing these things, knocking them out, launching these things twice a week sometimes, etc. But this is like old hat to Elon. He's like, nope, we're going to bet the farm on Starship, and that's the way it's going to have to go. So anyway, take a look at Angry Astronaut if you want to take a look at some of those in more detail. But what this brings up is Elon Musk's willingness to risk everything. And of course, historically, you can watch this. SpaceX almost went bankrupt. Tesla has almost gone bankrupt a couple of times. His other businesses, like in the early days, he, risked going into bankruptcy and stuff. He was always willing to risk whatever it took, including his own personal wealth, in order to make something work. He was looking sometimes in the early 2000s at going from a multimillionaire to being essentially, impoverished and broke. He was investing all of that kind of money and time into businesses that everybody said were going to fail. So historically, Elon Musk does not shy away from risk, and this is actually one of the reasons why I think he is so special. Most people, if you have a success in life, you're like, oh, that was great, yay, I'm gonna hold on to that. And you kind of like become more and more conservative and balled up, and you're like, I'm not gonna risk what I already have, I'll just risk little bits on the edges. Elon Musk is like, every time he has a success, he's like, I'm gonna take the whole ball and put it back in the court, and we're gonna see what happens. So he really is an all-in kind of person, and I really, really respect that. I think it's amazing to watch. Alex Honnold is kind of the athlete that I think mimics Elon Musk the most in terms of physical danger. And Alex Honnold, if you don't know Free Solo, he is a free solo kind of guy, right? He's willing to go out there and literally risk his life in order to not make money or anything, but in order to experience life and to live it the way he wants to. I feel like Elon Musk, obviously not risking his physical self, although not getting sleep for 3 years is probably a pretty good way to risk your physical health in the long term. But he's willing to risk his financial and emotional health in the same way that Alex Honnold is willing to risk his physical health. So all this is set up to say that Elon Musk is betting the farm. He's betting Tesla on full self-driving, on software. And I'm not joking about this. I believe that what's going to happen is that there will be no $25,000 Model 2 or $30,000 or whatever. There's not going to be an inexpensive car that will be sold to the public. He's going to ride out the Model Y and the Model 3, and they will produce the Cybertruck and potentially a commercial van, and of course the semi-truck and the Roadster, because they promised that that's going to come out. But I think that this $25,000 model car is going to end up being swept away because they've got so much demand for the Model 3 and the Model Y and eventually the Cybertruck from consumers that they can ride out a transition period where Elon Musk sees within the next couple of years. And when he talks about the robotaxi, he's talking about volume production in 2024. So that's approximately 2 years, maybe 2.5 years from now at the absolute outside. You can see they've got almost 1 year waiting lists for Model 3s and Model Ys depending on the configuration. So the demand for these cars is heavy enough that they can basically play out the next 2 to 2.5 years until they get to the point that Elon Musk and company, I assume, believe that the robotaxi will be able to take over. And then what happens? Well, remember that Tesla's mission is to transition the world to sustainable energy. One of the best ways to do that is to reduce the number of cars that are actually being produced in the world. And the best way to do that is to move from individual transportation, in other words, everybody everybody owning a car or 2 cars or 3 cars for your family to people owning 0 or 1 cars for their family, and utilizing vehicles at a much higher percentage usage than are right now. So again, my vehicle probably in terms of driving is somewhere between 5 and 10% of the day, probably closer to 5% of the day. I don't sit there and count hours, but the car just mostly sits. It doesn't do anything. What an incredible waste of a valuable resource, right? It just goes someplace and it sits in the parking lot, comes home, sits in the garage, doesn't do anything all the time. That is an incredible waste of a very expensive, both in terms of money and also in terms of carbon footprint and everything to make it. It's a very expensive proposition. So what better could you do than to make vehicles that you could produce? You could mass produce these vehicles and then they could operate over a lifetime of approximately 1 million miles or 10 years or something along those lines. And what you want at that point is not a car that's sexy for somebody to buy, right? You don't want people going like, ooh, that's the car that I want to purchase. You want to make this car indestructible. And again, I have done this video 2 years ago. I did this video, you can check it out here, where I talked about my vision for what I was calling at the time the Model 2 vehicle, but now I'm shifting this over to the robotaxi. Basically, it's an idea of something that's almost indestructible. It would have a single motor. It wouldn't accelerate super fast. It would have a stainless steel exoskeleton so that it was very, very tough, no paint needed, nothing like that. Probably a hatchback. I have mine in kind of an A-shaped thing with people sitting backwards, but a lot of people say they don't like to sit backwards, so I don't know. We'll see. A lot of robotaxi designs do actually have some seats backwards. I just happen to put mine like this instead of like this. So anyway, you can check out that video if you're interested in that because I go through it in painstaking detail. But the upshot of all of this is that you've got a completely new car and it will not have a steering wheel and it will not have an accelerator or brake pedal, and they've already got the design well underway, which means that they've already invested a great deal of time and money into creating this car and thinking about what it's going to look like and how it's going to function. And all of this is predicated on software. You have to solve full self-driving in order for this to work. And I mean, it has to be really solved. It has to work at least at level 4. And if you haven't seen my video on all the levels of full self-driving, you can check that out as well. But it has to operate under most circumstances without any intervention on the user's part. And this is super, super risky, right? The safe bet would be to build a Model 2 car, a $25,000 to $30,000 less expensive mass market car, get it out to the public, sell it, make your $5,000 to $10,000 profit per vehicle, and just move along. Instead, if Elon Musk is right, they will undercut the cost of anybody else being able to drive a car, right? Whether you own it yourself or take Uber where a person is driving, or even mass transit. They're saying it's going to be about the same or cheaper than subsidized mass transit, but you get your own vehicle. And then instead of a one-time $8,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 profit that you get out of selling the car, you own the car for 5 to 10 years until the thing wears out. And you get a profit all that time. So it could be $250,000, $300,000 over the life of this vehicle. Way, way, way more times. Like 20 or 30 times more profit than you would make on selling this car. That is a huge thing. And then you also own it at the end, and so you can recycle all of this stuff, right? In the earnings call yesterday, Elon Musk and Zach Kirkhorn and all, they talked about the recycling and their ability to recycle. If they have these things and they're made out of recyclable materials, at the end of the life, you just put them not into the scrap heap, but you put them back into the recycling machine, break them all apart, do what you need to do, melt them all back down again, re-energize the chemicals for the batteries, and spit them back out again. So you've got this virtuous cycle where it's just this continuous thing with these vehicles running. And also consider this, Tesla insurance. They just said yesterday that Tesla is now underwriting their own insurance, which means they're the people who are providing the money. They're underwriting in case there's an accident. It's their vehicles, it's their software running the vehicles. And if somebody gets in an accident, they've got a closed loop where they can actually figure out how to either make the repairs cheaper or keep the accidents from happening ever again in the future. This all sounds great for the present day, but think about it. When the robotaxi fleet comes online, what do you want? You want to be the insurance people. You don't want to be farming that out because you could pay Lloyd's of London or somebody, you could have to pay them a ton of money for insurance. So if Tesla has their own insurance, they have all the metrics, all the statistics, they know what makes a safe driver, so they can make their robotaxi do all of that stuff, and they can underwrite it all. So if there are suits reshoots, if there are accidents, there inevitably will be, right? Because nothing can drive 100% perfectly. When that stuff happens, they have a closed loop system where they're able to keep all of that money in-house, and it doesn't end up going out, and they don't lose profits on all of that. And additionally, they don't have to go hat in hand to every single insurance company and say, please insure us, please insure us, please insure us. They already have an insurance company that's perfectly willing to do that. So this is all genius stuff, right? Right now, they're working with human beings in the cars, but I am saying that they're betting the farm on this software. They're saying full self-driving is going to happen. We will not have drivers anymore. People, yeah, sure, there might be niche needs, and maybe they'll sell some Model S's and X's and Cybertrucks for people to go to work and do things like that. But for the most part, the bulk of the things that they are not going to sell, the bulk of the things that they're going to be producing in 5 to 10 years will be these robotaxi vehicles. And those are things that they'll just keep in their own fleet or potentially sell to companies like Hertz or, large fleets that will also rent them out on their own. So this is super high risk and super high reward. The risk is if full self-driving doesn't come about and it doesn't work well, they've got problems because they're kind of, they're ramping up production already to make this thing. The rewards are just massive. The profits on this, if you start thinking about 10+ million of these cars coming out every single year and moving into the roads, and people replacing their old cars with this, and all they're doing is driving around in Teslas, and Tesla either owns the fleet or they sell it to commercial operators who pay them a royalty or some sort of really good deal for Tesla. And that just, I can't even quite calculate the numbers. They're going to be so big. But wait, there's actually more. This is the next big risk-reward thing. Optimus, the Teslabot, is completely predicated on full self-driving, or whatever they're going to call it, the vision system that they're talking about. Optimus won't be able to function if they don't have a good real-world AI vision solution. It has to interact with the world the same way that the car does, but in an even more detailed manner than the car does. So here again, you've got your full self-driving vision software system that Optimus is predicated on. Huge risk. Again, if the software isn't solved, they can't produce Optimus, and they've wasted a ton of time and money and publicity and goodwill and all that other stuff. If it does work, however, Optimus takes off and the labor force now becomes a robotic labor force where we have a lot of energy that's available and we charge these things up and they do all the drudge work and things that we don't want to do, and we end up with a land of plenty. I mean, the risk reward here is massive. So even bigger than the cars is labor, an entire force of labor. And that is something that's almost unimaginable. When people start talking about Tesla as a potential CHOAM, which is the company that basically owns everything in the Dune series of books, it really starts to look like that when you think about the risk-reward system here. You've got this vision system and everything's predicated on it. Vision, real-world AI, solving all of this stuff. If you do that, you have a robotaxi fleet that you own that generates immense profits. You also have the Teslabot, which will generate even bigger profits, and that also opens up the way to going to Mars and things like that to colonize Mars. So that ties into SpaceX as well. And finally, you've got the machine that builds the machine. There also is a risk reward for digital software management. And Joe Justice has mentioned this previously, but basically everything in Tesla's factories runs on a vision system. And actually full self-driving came out of this. It actually was like kind of a side effect of the vision system that they use in the factories in order to allow them to be as efficient as possible. So if you want to build these things in the most efficient way possible, whether it's cars or solar panels or battery storage or Optimus or whatever it is, you need to have factories that are immensely efficient, and the most efficient way to do that is to have digital software management using an AI vision-based system. And so that's the third leg of this. You've got transportation in the form of robotaxis, you've got labor in the form of Optimus, and you've got factories in the form of digital software management that manages all of this stuff and produces these things at an ever-increasing scale, like an exponentially increasing scale of production. All of this stuff is kind of mind-blowing, and it makes me sound like a little bit of a nutcase, but I'm really starting to look at this and get more and more excited about Tesla. I mean, I don't even know if there's a market cap to something like this, right? I'm not a financial analyst. I say that a bunch of times over and over again, so don't take this as investment advice. But what I'm seeing is that when people start talking about Tesla being worth $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a share, it's kind of ridiculous. I think Joe Justice said $100,000 a share in an interview that he did, 6 or 8 months ago. I'm starting to come around to that opinion, that Tesla could be worth that kind of money per share because there's never been anything like this before. We have no precedent and no way to really scale this. And if that doesn't get you excited and optimistic about the future, well, then you better talk to Elon Musk because you need a little pep talk. All right, I hope you found this episode fun and thought-provoking and interesting. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it, and also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. I'm very curious what all of you are going to think about this particular episode. We've had conversations sort of around this before, but never quite as direct as this. So I'll be interested in the video comments and we can talk about it some more. Anyway, if you want to join the team, definitely check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have Teslabot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.